Welcome back. Joining me now in the studio is former Speaker of the House, Bronwyn Bishop. And Bronwyn, thank you so much for coming in and speaking with me tonight. I want to talk to you about an article that was in today's Australian, and it was Mick Kelty, who led the AFP for 8 years and he's come out and has backed families' demand for a Royal Commission. But one thing that really stood out for me in that article was Mr Kelty said that if law enforcement misunderstands the nature of the crime it is trying to prevent, it will fail to prevent the next one. What do you think he is looking into with that? And do you think this is part of the reason why we really need a Royal Commission, to really get an understanding and as much information as possible?
Yes. Now, he made the case of the need for the Royal Commission, and the fundamental point is the difference between what the Prime Minister, who's a snivelling coward as far as I'm concerned, terrified of what might come out, is that with a Royal Commission you can coerce witnesses and get evidence and demand documents. You have much greater powers. But the inquiry that is being proposed by the Prime Minister, you invite someone along politely and say, would you mind giving us a little chat here?
Yeah, so they're not forced to tell the truth.
It's just not a no, and you can't force people to turn up. So it really is Albanese showing how fearful he is, and he's terrified of losing those in the Western seats. The real question to be answered is why, since the attack on Israel by Hamas in October 23, why since then has anti-Semitism grown in this country? That is the fundamental question. It has grown, it has festered, and it's now the attempt to normalise it as what has occurred. Now, we have people here who have been splendid, first-class Australian citizens for years, terrified to go out. That is not my country. That is not what we deserve in this country. And I've said before that I sat for more than 20 years in that parliament with Albanese, and I said nobody said then that he was a leader. Well, he is no leader. He's got no courage to be a leader. He has to have the Royal Commission to find out all the things that have gone wrong so that it can be addressed and dealt with. And Mike Kelty's article today was spot on. He really did spell it out.
Yeah, it was definitely worth everyone at home to read it, because he definitely delved into the importance of why a Royal Commission is required. But on the other side, Chris Minns, the New South Wales Premier, has really encouraged people to get out and enjoy New Year's Eve, especially with the celebrations. Let's take a listen to what the Premier had to say.
We can't let these people win. We have to show defiance by going out and spending time with family and friends over the New Year period.
Now, what did you make of Chris Minns' performance so far in the aftermath of the terrorist attack? But also, how important is it that we continue to live our lives and not let terror, as the Premier said, win?
He shows up, the difference. He has admitted that they failed earlier. I mean, there was no action taken on the Sydney Opera House forecourt when the police should have acted and didn't. And there was no action. The wrong arguments were put to the court, which allowed that Harbour Bridge to be commandeered and taken over in disgraceful march. But he's admitted he was lacking. But he's now taking leadership and saying that we will go ahead with the Royal Commission, admitting that he hopes he'll get cooperation from federal agencies, but without the jurisdictional ability to do so. So he's been quite firm, using long arms when it's necessary, and it is necessary in this time. I remember when I had to order that we used long arms in the Parliament when we were under threat. So I think that the difference that Minns is showing up Albanese to be it's chalk and cheese.
Yeah. Do you think it gets to a point, though, where Albanese sees what the Premier of New South Wales is doing with things like the action and calling for a state-based Royal Commission would drive Albo to potentially act and enforce a federal Royal Commission because he's seeing what's happening in New South Wales?
I like to think that was going to be the case in the beginning, because they've no doubt been doing a lot of polling because we suddenly saw Penny Wong appear, and no, it was no apology from her. It was a regret. That wasn't an apology. She didn't personally apologise for anything. But you saw her and you've seen a few others coming out. So it's biting, it's hurting. I thought originally that he might cave, but I think his fear of what might come out is much greater, and he thinks he can just last it out. Because if you have a Royal Commission federally, you'll have people giving evidence for months upon months, and the election's 28 months away. You could have a decision in there, you'd have to act on it, and there would be things coming out of there he would not want to come out. That is quite clear. That's why he's digging his heels in. And when I heard this dreadful sort of statement that somebody might say something that disagrees with somebody else, couldn't have that. I mean, seriously.
And you probably find as well that the Royal Commission, the timing would be coming out closer to when the election's on, so that would be all the headlines throughout that 2028 campaign. One thing that the Premier did also say today, you were mentioning about the long arms, is he did say that the level of security around Sydney, in particular on New Year's Eve, is really going to shock Sydney-siders because they aren't used to seeing this. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
We need to have huge security available on the scene during New Year's Eve celebrations. And yes, in many cases it'll be confronting for members of the community to see police with big firearms and machine guns, which aren't normally the case on Sydney streets, but I don't make any apology for that. We want people to be safe in our community, but we want them to live their lives.
I actually think Sydney-siders will probably be happy to see the beefed up security. What do you think? What are your thoughts if you see that level of security walking around the streets? I know I saw it at the cricket when I was at the Boxing Day test just recently, and I must say when I first saw it I thought, oh wow. But it is when you first see it, but I think if everyone knows that it's going to be there and expecting it.
Well, I think the problem that Premier Minns has is this question of police being warned, and indeed was the government warned 3 weeks beforehand. That is going to be a very difficult question, but it must be aired, and at least he has the courage to address it.
Now, Bronwyn, another topic that I'd like to get your thoughts on, which was in The Australian today, and I've mentioned it in my editorial, and I also asked Nicole Flint about it, but it was Attorney General Michelle Rowland who's just quietly pushed through those changes to legal counsel that represents the Commonwealth. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on the timing, but it was more so just about the priorities just are so wrong with this government. It seems as though it's all out of whack. They have their priorities completely wrong.
Totally. I mean, it was any announcement they can get out there that might attract attention away from the focus for the need for a Royal Commission that is being given. But the principle of it is wrong. I mean, there are some very difficult cases that have to go to higher courts, to the High Court and the Federal Court, and you want your best counsel to be appearing for you. What this does is lower the pool of talent that they're entitled to pick from. So it's not only 40% of briefs issues, it's 40% of the value of the brief fee. Yeah. Now, top counsel, senior counsel are going to be charging a hell of a lot. How are you going to have 40% of that fee? So it's a ridiculous thing. And then we go into gender. Never before have we had gender or race or sexuality or anything concerned. For me, old-fashioned, I always like best man for the job or best woman for the job. And if I can give you an example of how important it is to have the best people appearing from you, when I was aged care minister, I had a home I had to close down because it was really bad. And I had legislation I had to absolutely be accurately interpreting. And believe me, I did, for weekend after weekend. And I said to my DepSec, please find me someone outside the bubble who's good at this. And we've got to win. We had our first time in court was, he wanted to, the owners of it wanted to get prevent us being able to close it. So we won that first round. After that, everybody knew I meant business. And we just kept going. But he took me to court, he sued me, took me and the Secretary of the Department to court again and again and again. But because we'd done our homework, because we had a good brief, because we had good counsel, we won every time. Every time. And that's got to be the way that when you are a minister, and particularly Attorney General, pursuing the enforcement of the law is the way you have to go. And you can't say, oh, well, I don't want someone who won't do the work on the brief. I'll just have someone who meets my percentage criteria. It's just bad.
Yeah, and here was me thinking that we started to move away from all of those DEI requirements. Bronwyn, thank you so much for your time this evening. I really appreciate you coming in.
Great pleasure.